TCI is brought to you by Spendthrift Stallion Flat Out, one of the fastest and most accomplished horses ever from the AP Indy sire line. First 2-year-olds have sold for up to $400,000. Look for more at upcoming sales.
Welcome back to TCI, your inside track to the Triple Crown. Alongside Joel Cunningham, I'm John Siegel. Well, Joel, when I think about last weekend, one word comes to mind: disappointment. I mean, when we saw the Rebel and how American Anthem ran in there, Joel, it was just very disappointing. Tell me, what did you think of your number one on the TCI Top 10?
Well, I was highly disappointed, John, particularly knowing Bob Baffert's track record and the fact that this colt, again, figured to have all the upside, in my opinion, a tremendous classic profile when you're trying to really evaluate all the factors that you think makes a horse that can win the Kentucky Derby and have an impact here. You see here, American Anthem, he's already done. I mean, he's completely has nothing, and Mike Smith basically takes care of him here. But let's not talk about bad runs. Let's talk about who wins the race. Malagasy stays undefeated here. The son of Shackelford here, you see getting the job done. I'm not so sure what kind of a race this was and how much quality there was in it. You see Untrapped here, who's the runner-up in the Risen Star. He runs honestly in here and really has 3 horses on the wire for runner-up. And one of them was the horse I didn't think had any shot in the race, and that was Sonneteer. The maiden come from Santa Anita, who ran about as well as any of them besides your winner. So again, my takeaway is when I look at the Beyer speed figure 91, I look at the race overall and you know, the first 4 or 5 finishers and the separation there. I personally don't think it's going to be a race that's going to be super impactful on the Kentucky Derby trail, but take nothing away from Malagasy. Certainly bred to handle 2 turns. Pletcher, again, was commented saying as fast as he was in the morning, he thought this horse was a sprinter. Clearly, he handled the middle distance in here. Be interesting to see how he handles another 16th of a mile, which shouldn't be a problem for him next time out in the Arkansas Derby, but he will face better in there.
All right, I know you said let's don't talk about the bad run in there, but Joel, we have to talk about it. That was your number one on the TCI Top 10, was American Anthem. Tell me, what happens to your Top 10 now?
Oh, I know we weren't going to get away from American Anthem. We definitely have to talk about him and where he fits now in the Derby picture and where Bob Baffert fits. I mean, here's a trainer that, again, if you would have told me 2 weeks ago, you know, with Bob Baffert making an impact on the Derby, I'd say absolutely the race goes through him. Because at the time, you know, you're looking at some of these horses like McCracken missing races, Classic Empire with the injury, and you started looking at the attrition. You said, well, Mastery and American Anthem, that's a pretty strong hand for Bob Baffert. We know what happened with Mastery, and now with American Anthem running as poorly as he did. He did throw a shoe in the race. They said he struggled over the surface. I didn't think he looked very comfortable in the post-parade. He had a little kidney sweat going there, but overall physically, I thought he looked like a horse that should have ran a lot better. I mean, look, you can have all the excuses in the world, but if you're going to fold up shop the final 1/8 of a mile and just absolutely make no account of yourself in a race that I didn't think was very good. It's not like Arrogate drew away by 15 in a race and it was a good race. I didn't think this was a good race. So for American Anthem to fold his tent like that, he falls way down the list for me. The good news for him is if Unique Bella, who stays at the 10 spot, if she continues to do what Jerry Hollendorfer is saying to the media, that they're pointing for the Oaks, not the Derby, they're focused on the Oaks, then who's going to run in the Santa Anita Derby? I mean, you could be looking at Gormley versus maybe American Anthem for a Grade 1 race worth 100 points. Somebody's got to win and get into the Kentucky Derby. So again, I'm not comfortable putting a new shooter in my top 10 yet, not even Malagasy. I mean, I really like my top 8 to 10. The filly's probably not going to be a Derby horse now. I'll leave her on the list for now in case Jerry changes his mind. But American Anthem, look, I'll keep him in the 9th spot for now, John. I'm certainly not very comfortable with him being there. I still like his profile, but you couldn't like what you saw this weekend.
No, I really didn't. I'll tell you another thing. When I look at that TCI Top 10, you know, we started off the year really thinking, man, this is a great crop. Everything's kind of shifting, you know. When I look at it, I don't see any horse that's really standing out and saying, hey, I'm the horse that you got to come beat. It's been really interesting to kind of see how that's happening looking at the top 10.
Well, you know, everybody slid up a notch for us on that list, and I think it's fitting that McCracken fell in the 1 spot for us now because honestly, you know, you start looking at, again, this top 10, based on his work at Keeneland earlier this week, I really like that work. He looks like he's a colt that's back on track to me. They have enough time to get him ready for the Bluegrass to serve as a good final prep, and with the foundation he had it too, and the fact he had that race in Sam Davis, there's enough there for me to still believe he can be the horse to beat now. Classic Empire is a horse that I feel the opposite of. You know, he missed another work where he refused to work. They're saying, well, maybe a change is changing and we'll get him up to Keeneland. It's not anything physical, it's more mental with him. And we know he had those mental issues as a 2-year-old when he swerved out of the gate and lost his rider in the hopeful. And he's always been a horse that that sort of was a little slower developing mentally, but he was so good last winter in California that you thought that was behind him. Now he's obviously not on top of his game, John. I don't move him too far on my list right now. I'm moving him up with everybody else as American Anthem goes back. But watch out for Classic Empire. He could very well be off the Kentucky Derby soon. If I had to put a percentage at it, I'd say he's probably even under 50% now to run in the Kentucky Derby based on the way things are going.
All right, well, we got to talk about this weekend. We have 3 races. They're not really marquee races, Joel, but they are going to punch their ticket into the Derby at this point.
Yeah.
So we got to talk about, we got the Sunland Derby. You know, it's an interesting race. When I look down through here, I see IRAP. This horse has been facing some really good competition. When you look at Mastery, you know, Royal Mo kind of disappointed last weekend, but he ran second to him. He ran second to Conquest Mo Money last time out. But Joel, they're putting blinkers back on him. Tell me, what do you think about his chances?
Yeah, Conquest More Money is that's the horse for course. He's undefeated there at Sunland, but he'll have some pace pressure in here. Going a little bit further, you know, Bob Baffert, Bronze Age, a very fast horse. You know he'll be forwardly placed, so that'll at least be a legitimate pace in here. This is more of a merry-go-round type track over there at Sunland. It's not a very conventional oval these horses are used to racing over, so it can favor speed, and it's usually very fast. IRAP, I think with the blinkers back on, going another 16th of a mile, Son of Tisnow. We know that he's going to handle the distance probably better than anybody in the race. So I think he has the rights for an improved performance, really stepping away from running behind horses like Mastery and Royal Mo to this type group, I think with the blinkers on a mile and 1/8. I think he's tough. Bob Baffert, I mean, again, you know, usually when Bob Baffert ships into Sunland, he wins, similar to Oakland we talked about. I mean, there's some cases to where maybe, you know, that's not it. But I think with Bronze Age, he's coming in very well met at this class level. I think he'll be your favorite in the race. And I thought really an outside a long shot here that I'm interested in is Kimbear, the 7 horse. He's the son of Temple City. He's bred for 2 turns, and most people think turf when they think Temple City, and that's what they thought this horse was his first 3 starts. But you look, he ran well. But his 2 dirt performances, when they moved him onto the dirt, were good. He ran behind Iliad in a maiden race that was very fast. And then he came back last time out, broke his maiden, and beat Sonneteer by 4.5 lengths. Sonneteer came back. We talked about him. We know what he did in the Rebel Stakes. So, again, Temple City, the stamina. Kimbear getting around 2 turns in the Sunland Derby. He's a horse that I think could upset here and maybe work his way onto the Derby trail. And you mentioned that these aren't marquee preps. But John, it's worth noting, we just talked about how vulnerable this division is right now. There's 43-year-olds running amongst these 3 races.
Wow.
And at least 3 horses are going to punch their ticket in the Kentucky Derby. So pay attention this weekend. Don't just say, well, there's no marquee grade 1s, let's not pay attention. I still think that we could still see some emergence, and maybe you'll see it in the Sunland Derby.
All right, well, let's move now to Turfway Park, and let's talk about the Spiral. You know, Joel, in here, again, it's not the toughest field in there, but like you said, somebody's going to punch their ticket. Who do you like in the Spiral?
You know, John, it is on the poly track. I think your favorite was going to be It's Your Nickel, but they decided to bypass this race. He was the winner of the Battaglia, the prep, very impressively. He might have been the favorite in here. They decided to bypass and point for the Bluegrass Stakes. It's a much tougher affair on the dirt that It's Your Nickel is going to have to really step up there, but that was the owner and trainer's decision to do that. So it left this race sort of wide open. I mean, you're still getting 12 horses in here. I think Ken Ramsey punches his ticket again with a son of Kitten's Joy. Kitten's Cat, I mean, he's had great form all winter down in Florida. I mean, this is a typical horse that wins this race. These stakes caliber, high allowance caliber turf horses at Gulfstream that ship up and run on that poly track, which plays like turf. They're usually the class of the race. They usually handle the surface. And we know Kitten's Joy loves a poly track. I mean, how many Derby starters has Ramsey had winning the Spiral Stakes? Now, they're all long shots on the dirt in the Derby, but Ken Ramsey may punch his ticket again here. I think Kitten's Cat's going to be tough. And if there's a horse that can beat him, I think maybe it's the upside of Parlor, the horse drawn to his outside. You know, he's another one with turf pedigree. He's by Lonhro. He's out of a pulpit mare, and he's had really good form around a mile on the turf. Can he extend out to a mile and 1/8? He's a horse with a turn of foot that could challenge Kitten's Cat late.
Well, we love having Ken Ramsey in the Derby. He's such a character. It's
he's
always
Mr.
fun.
Kentucky. I mean, he wants to win that race. This would be another long shot, but it'd be nice to see him in the race.
Sure would. All right, let's jump all the way over to Maidan now, and let's talk about the UAE Derby. You know, Joel, this was a race that typically, when it was on the poly, it really wasn't a very good Derby prep. They've done a great thing in trying to get more international people over. It's worth 100 points. So, I mean, you're guaranteed. There may be, you know, multiple horses that are going to get enough points to go in. You know, I thought it was very interesting when we saw Lonnie win it last year and how that whole experience, it was a test to see how the Japanese market would receive coming over and being in the Kentucky Derby. They loved it. They thought it was great. It's interesting that now we see another Japanese horse in this race.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you talk about Lonnie. I mean, let's first mention, we're talking about this, it's a 16 horse field. You're going to get some Southern Hemisphere flavor in here with some of the Southern Hemisphere 4-year-olds that certainly have a shot in the race. But 16 horses, John, you get some of Europe's best 3-year-olds that maybe are just cut below being, you know, Guinea Derby type horses for Coolmore there. You get the couple Japanese horses like you mentioned, and you get Master Plan coming over for Todd Pletcher, an up-and-coming horse that ran a good race behind Tappert earlier this year. Sure. We know how good Tappert's gotten. Yep. So what I think about this race is there's enough talent to pay attention to it because, like you said, since they've gone back to dirt, I mean, look at the last 3 winners of this race. Toast of New York, runner-up behind Bayern in the Breeders' Cup Classic on dirt. Mubtahij, a legitimate Grade 1 dirt horse here in America. Might have been a little disappointing in terms of, you know, what we thought he could be, but still, legitimate Grade 1 dirt horse. He's proven that. And look at last year's winner, Lonnie, like you said. If Lonnie doesn't go wide in the Belmont Stakes in that far turn, in my opinion, he might have been the Belmont Stakes winner. So we've seen this race, now that it's back on dirt, really turn out to produce legitimate Grade 1 American dirt races, even though they're from other parts of the country typically. So I definitely think there's enough talent in here that you could see a horse punch his ticket this weekend and prove to be a legitimate top 5, top 10, maybe even top 5 Derby contender this year.
It's interesting, man. Like you said, it's open this year. There's no real super standout. So it'd be interesting to see if out of these races that everybody says are not the marquee races, if we see a superstar emerge.
Well, and you mentioned the Japanese horses. Where might as well talk about him since you mentioned him. He's 4 for 4, Epicaris. You know, I went back. You can watch his races on YouTube. Horse has been very impressive. To me, he's got a tactical style. You can obviously see the class. He was in the pocket, had to slip up the inside to catch the pace setter last time out. It's probably going to be the pace setter in here, and that's Adorado. You see her running second to him here. Adorado's got tremendous dirt form too, so don't discount the Japanese horses in this race. I definitely think in terms of horses to beat, I think Epicaris is the horse to beat in here. Wow. And then for me, I think Master Plan. How good is that late kick on the dirt? We know how good it was on the poly. How good is it going to be on the dirt? Because he's certainly one that's going to love a mile on the 3/16. To me, he looks like he wants to run all day and unleash those long legs of his and that big stride. But to me, the 2 X-Factor horses in here are the Coolmore horses. Lancaster Bomber, who people know well, he had Group 1 form last year, and he was the runner-up in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. Now, to me, he's by Warfront, but he has more of a miler turf pedigree, so I don't really like his chances much, even though he's the highly regarded of the 2 Coolmore horses here. But Spirit of Valor is interesting to me. He's an $850,000 weanling. Wow. Stone Street bought into half of him. He's out of a grindstone mare, and it's a family that has some class in it, and that really comes along, you know, as 3-year-olds around 2 turns. And this horse showed some form as a 2-year-old. He hadn't run this year, but he broke his maiden second time out, and he was second in a Group 3, and they put him away. He's bred well enough for the dirt, and look, these Coolmore connections, they've done him well in this race with Daddy Longlegs, and we know the horses, Lines of Battle, I think was another horse that won this race once they started running over at Maidan. So watch out for the Coolmore horses, and don't be surprised if a horse like Spirit of Valor punches through in here and proves to be maybe a Derby contender.
All right, thank you, Joel. Yep. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you come back next week. We'll talk about these races and see who punches their ticket to this year's Kentucky Derby.